That's great. So my name is Melissa McMann. I'm the Youth Protection Specialist with Kiwanis International. I've actually been with Kiwanis for a little over a year. I started in January, and then 6 weeks later, we got sent home for the pandemic. So it's definitely been an interesting first year. I do come from a background of child welfare from the state of Indiana at the Department of Child Services, as well as Department of Health and also Human Services. I spent 20 years as a government employee. So I'm really excited to be here. Thank you, Katie and Mary, for inviting me today. So hopefully you can all see my screen. And as Katie and Mary had said, that if there's any questions, to go ahead and put it in the chat. One thing I would be interested to see in the chat is how many of you are advisors for a local Key Club, or even a Builders Club, or K-Kids, or even at the collegiate level, a CKI. We might have, I'm not sure if we have our district administrators on, but if they're in there, I'll look at the chat as well. So thank you all for being here. Youth protection is a very important topic. It's sometimes uncomfortable to talk about, but one of the reasons why KI has put so much money and energy and effort into making and streamlining our policies and procedures is because we do have over 300,000 students that are student members. From our Key Club has the largest population, and then to our collegiate Circle K, Builders Club, K-Kids. And so sometimes today I'm going to be talking about SLP. So when I talk about SLP, that's our service leadership programs. And basically it includes Action Club as well as the collegiate. So a lot of the policies and procedures that I'm going to go over today include those other vulnerable populations, not just the youth up to 18 as well. So here's some statistics about abuse. Globally, 1 in 4 youth will suffer some type of abuse or maltreatment. And oftentimes the children, they know their abuser. And when we look at abuse statistics, oftentimes it's someone who has care and control of a youth, where they have access to them or privacy. So within Kiwanis International, we have a multifaceted approach to looking at youth protection. So we have it not only protecting our youth from predators, whether that be, unfortunately, a member or even an outside. When we are responsible for our youth and we're taking them to amusement parks, or we're taking them to a district convention, also, making sure that we're providing safe and secure environments for all of those vulnerable populations. We also want to empower and educate the adult members. So thank you for inviting me so that I get to talk to a broad audience today here in Moark. And then we also want to provide the youth themselves with positive skills development. These are the leaders. These are the cream of the crop of our schools. And oftentimes the youth themselves are aware of or hear from other peers who may report abuse, or even maybe even dating violence, or students who might have suicide ideations because something's happened to them in the past. So we do want to work on all of those goals. And the way that we have put this into practice is accessible training, B, background checks and beyond, and then C, culture of care. So first off, and I will put this in the chat just real quick for everyone, that there are additional resources, Kiwanis.org, youth protection. If any of you have questions, or if you're an advisor, you can find our policies and procedures on our website, as well as background checks. So I'm going to go over high level of all these different topics, but if you want to dive deeper, you can check out our website. And also, I do have some recordings. So annually, October is Youth Protection Week. This is our youth protection training website, and we're always updating it with resources. So we do have a PowerPoint presentation that you can use to the club, but I think this is a great opportunity, talking with Katie and Mary, that you can use this 30-minute video that I'm doing at your club program. As well as if any of you are club secretaries and you want to see a past recorded role in youth protection and how a club secretary does have a role in youth protection. So I'm going to go over policy. One thing that is really great about Kiwanis International is we have standardized policy for globally. I was actually on a call yesterday with YWSA and the Salvation Army, and they actually have different policies at different levels, whether it's district or their different alliances. So I'm really proud of Kiwanis, all the efforts. We did update this last February to include some background checks for chaperones, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But education. So you may not know that in the policy, in our Kiwanis International policy, is that annually every club would review this policy document that you can find on the website and have an education training to review this, or have someone speak, whether it's someone maybe in your club who feels comfortable with it. Or we also have Michaela Story. If she's on, if she could give a wave, she's actually your district youth protection manager, and she is a great resource for you if you have questions about who's been background checked, or does your club need training, or can she help? She's a great resource. I'm also available if your club needs to do a training or has questions as well. But oftentimes there is the forums at the district level as well. A new thing that we offered last year for Kiwanis is prevention, child abuse prevention, sexual abuse prevention training. So it's more on the fundamentals of what does abuse look like. If you're a volunteer, we actually have e-learning courses that we passed in policy that if you're an advisor, you're required to take these courses. It's through a Presidium website. Presidium is someone who we partnered with. They're actually a 25-year nonprofit organization who provides research and training, and we actually partnered with them on doing a 1-800 helpline as well. And then chaperones. If you plan on being a chaperone to like an overnight event, we also ask that you complete these courses. They're about 15 minutes, the video. Typically, there's no quiz or anything. Our advisors are automatically enrolled, as well as our youth protection managers and our district administrators. But if anyone is a general member and is interested, and you're curious or you volunteer, oh, how do we communicate? Oh, you're going to collect the questions. Yes, thank you. Sorry about that. But on the Kiwanis Connect, in the member profile, you can log in, and if you are interested in taking the courses, you can create, click on the Create Presidium account link, and you'll get an email, and it will give you the login. If you are an advisor, and this is the first time that you've heard about Presidium, feel free to email youthprotection@kiwanis.org or contact Presidium, and we can get you your login information and send your password. As we move on to talking about policy and background checks, for those of you who are advisors, Kiwanis Internationals require that all advisors for the SLPs, so Circle K, Key Club Builders, K Kids in Action, that they have a background check. We actually have a vendor, Safe Hiring Solutions, Safe Visitor Solutions. So it's a standardized process across North America. Our other ASPAC countries, we're working with those individually because we know that there are different requirements for different countries. And then for background checks, if you're going to be a chaperone, especially if you're overnight or even participating in a single day off school premises, that we require a background check. Anywhere where there might be care and control of a student. Now, if you're having a pancake breakfast and you've invited the Builders Club or the Key Club to do dishes, and you'll donate $50 to them. We're not asking that all of the members of your general club have a background check. We ask that there is an adult that has a background check, the advisor or the faculty advisor, that they're there and that they are like a minimum of 1 adult to 10 students, and that one that adult has a background check. We also ask that the chaperones follow all the youth protection policies and procedures, as well as the advisors. And when it comes to overnights, we do ask that, and again, when we're thinking about overnights, we're thinking about maybe there's a fall retreat that the Key Club is doing, or maybe students are going to international convention or a decon in another city. We ask that they're adult chaperones, 1 male to 10 male students and 1 female to 10 female students. And we'd ask that both of those have background checks as well. And we do say adults don't sleep in the same room as the students unless you are a parent, or unless it's a bunkhouse or a cabin and there's no other alternative. But for the most part, students should be sharing rooms with other students. When it comes to reporting guidelines, whatever your state, each state is different for their reporting guidelines, and whoever is a mandatory reporter. Teachers are typically mandatory reporters, and the advisors. If you're an advisor and you hear of a student talking about abuse and that maybe they have been a victim of abuse, it's better to report it and get the law enforcement involved sooner rather than later. If there's been any unsafe behavior, say you are at an amusement park and you hear of something that happened, whether it's sexual harassment or sexual assault, contact law enforcement, and then also contact those advisors or the personnel who are planning the meeting. And also definitely as far as reporting, even after the fact, like I said, if you hear about something maybe following an event, and primarily getting other the advisors involved, maybe even the district administrator of that Key Club or Builders Club involved. They've had the training as well. We do have a youth protection helpline. This is a way that students, if they want to report something anonymously, they can. This is also open to Kiwanis members. This is staffed by Presidium staff who are trained in social services, crisis intervention, and they will provide other hotlines. So if there is a student who is worried about a friend about suicide and they aren't sure what number to call, we have this number on our Kiwanis International, all our web pages, as well as doing some social media campaigns. So we splash it on our Facebook as well as our Instagram. And we do share at the students' governor's training and with the board of trustees as well. So looking at policy about social media and contacting with students. So our best bet is if your local club works with or contacts the students in a group setting. So avoiding one-on-one conversations, whether it's text or email with students. So if you're a club president and you would like to invite the Key Club, your best bet is to do a group email, or include that faculty advisor, include that Kiwanis advisor who is identified in our record, so that there are other adults on that. So it's not a one-on-one conversation with the students. And primarily that's for your protection as well as it is for the students' protection. And then I'd also say that posting pictures of students with the internet these days, students' pictures, it's a digital footprint. It's there for forever. So make sure that if you're a Key Club, make sure that you're getting parents' permission to use the student's picture. So you're giving away a scholarship and you want to include that student's picture on your Facebook page. That's great. just make sure that you have the parents' permission and the parents feel comfortable that you can use that student's that photo. Another thing for security purposes, we've actually at Kiwanis International been scrubbing out a student's picture and their name just to prevent any kind of predator behavior online where they might see a student's name and the school and their picture and too much information about an individual student that they might be an online predator. Unfortunately, there's been an increase in that during the pandemic. And speaking of the pandemic, many of our clubs, as Stu alluded to, have not been meeting in person, and oftentimes they are on Zoom or they are, in some kind of electronic video chat, whether it's Teams or Zoom. So if you are working with youth, make sure that they're dressed appropriately. If they're coming to a meeting and on Zoom, make sure their background's appropriate, make sure they're not bullying each other in the chat. When we do our Key Club senior night, we will limit the chat so students can't be chatting amongst themselves. Now that might be something that you allow because it's a smaller group, but just watching that so that there's no bullying behavior, there's no harassing, that kind of thing. When there are, again, just making that environment that we're working with the youth as safe as possible, and as that shifts to online, continuing to make that as safe as well. This has been around for a long time, but making sure that when you are transporting students, maybe from the high school to your club meeting, or you're going out of town, that there's at least 3 people in the car. And if there is an opportunity where you've dropped off some students and there's only 1 in the car, one of the ways that we recommend, let the parents know, hey, I've just dropped off, whether it's a text or a phone call, I've dropped off the other 2 students, 1 more, or yours will be coming. And then also, as always, follow any local school or law policies. Oftentimes you can, if you are transporting students, you would look to the school policy and what they would have requirements, or what kind of permission slips that the school requires. That's definitely something that you want to be aware of. And then when it comes to medication, whether it's prescription or over the counter, students need to make sure that they have a written permission from the parents. So even if it's Advil, for a liability purpose, the advisor needs to have that. And oftentimes in the permission slip, there might be a clause, or there might be a caveat of what kind of medication, if you're going on it overnight or if you're going on a long day. But it protects the student, knowing that the parents have given permission. And when we talk about background checks, so we talked about all advisors, Kiwanis advisors. When we talk about faculty advisors, all the states, at least in the US, and I know in the Caribbean and also in Canada, require different types of background checks for their teachers. So if teachers are participating with the students, say they have a 7 a.m. club meeting, their background check is sufficient. They're on school grounds. We're not asking them to get our Kiwanis International background check. However, as soon as that teacher becomes a chaperone and they go to your district convention, and they're going to a hotel and it's being sponsored by Kiwanis, then that's when we ask that they be a chaperone, that they get a background check through our system. And we can do that. So a couple different ways. Each of you individually, there is on your member portal in Kiwanis Connect, there's actually a link to get a background check. And if maybe you've had one in the past and you're not familiar with if it's due, it's good for 2 years. On Kiwanis Connect in your personal page, you can actually go in there and you can see that yourself, as well as the club secretary. The club secretary really does have an important role, because they are able to, if they have a club account, they can send out to members. Oftentimes clubs will have a direct billing account set up with Safe Hiring Solutions. so that they can actually be billed directly. Here's some compliance data that I thought that I would share. One thing that I will go back to with Michaela, Kiwanis has 30 different district youth protection managers. So I am really thankful that we have Michaela as a resource that she can then provide training. And she also is really helpful in talking to whether it's the governor or the lieutenant governor on the compliance rate of background checks. And we have reports that we can send, and we do kind of data and collecting of how many advisors are on record that have a background check. Right now, we're about 86% of those Kiwanis advisors, and we really want to get that up to 100%. So we're continuing to do messaging. We send out monthly reminders to those advisors that they can start their background check by clicking on a link in an email. We try and make it as easy as possible. For advisors, the fee is only $25. And I will say, as far as it's really tiny, and I have already sent this to Katie and Mary, this presentation, so that you will have it and they can share it. Because I know some of this information, I'm going a little fast. But when it comes to Missouri and Arkansas, one of the things that I would ask for, you're at a 50% rate of the number of advisors that are on record versus how many service leadership clubs you have. So I would ask you as leaders to go back to your local club and talk to the club secretary and just make sure that your records are updated. Every time I send out a report to the youth protection managers, they'll come back and say, oh, that person hasn't been an advisor in a couple years, or they retired and now someone else is. So I would definitely go back to your clubs and make sure that those advisors are identified and on record, because honestly, that's one of the ways that we're protecting our youth to get those background checks and make sure that there aren't any predators that have violent offenses on their record. So like I said, our goal is 100%. And then as we move into culture of care, what is culture of care? So we realize that at KI, we're doing a lot of training, and we have done a lot of training about background checks and what are they and the importance, and then also about the different policies. But then the students, we've heard from our international trustees and our board, kind of what I said earlier, that they do have other student friends. These are the leaders in their classes that may be reported to, and the students don't know where to go or what to do. So we created a culture of care initiative, and basically providing students with the training on how to have conversations and to have dialogue, and maybe even do some programming in their key club about preventing bullying or reducing instances of maybe dating violence or unhealthy relationships and personal boundaries. And there's several different ways that we've been working with the youth. So we have a champion, a certified champion program for Key Club, where we worked with a coalition to end sexual assault. They came up with a curriculum of different activities that Key Club students can use in their, if they take the 4 courses and they get certified, and how they can do it. And we're also, that same outside organization is helping us develop curriculum for college age students, and have some healthy boundary videos and some other kind of messaging for our Builders Club as well. So I am at that question time frame. And I will also say that these are different ways that you can reach me and my team. So if you have a background check question, you want to renew it, or you don't even know if you have it or whatever, you can reach out to backgroundchecks@kiwanis.org, or youth protection, talking about training, youth protection at kiwanis.org. And then if you have any students that are interested in the conversation around building a culture of care amongst students, we have that email as well.
Hi, Melissa. This is Jennifer York, your chat monitor. And I know that you had asked people to respond in
Hey, Jennifer,
regarding.
before you start, Melissa, can you go back to full screen, please?
Yes.
Great, there you are. Hi. So and several people responded in the chat, so I'll let you, if you want to circle back through there and see, but we did have a good representation. There's probably a lot more on the call. But one of the first questions, most of the resources that we have, that the clubs have for youth protection training are too long for the club's time limits. They have 45 minutes and they don't feel like they can fit that full training into a meeting without rushing. So what do you suggest?
I would suggest that this recording, if you want to share this recording, that's really good feedback, and I will take that back and work on making that shorter. Because I've been asked to do club presentations, and it's a lot of information, and I want to cover it, but I appreciate that, and I can make it shorter.
Great. And I know you mentioned we've had several requests for your PowerPoint slides, which were great. And I know you already mentioned that you would be providing those. So everyone should be aware and watch for those. And then as far as some of the ratio, with Circle K, most members are 18 or over. So how does that work into the ratios for Circle K?
That's a good question. Typically, with Circle K, they actually typically, you know what? Let me get back on that. I don't want to say for sure, but I was going to say we were just talking the other day about international convention, and the students themselves come on their own, and they don't always come with the advisor. So I'll get back on that.
Okay, and another, with ratios as far as transgender, if a SLP would have transgender students, what do you suggest?
So for that, we actually have that in the policy document as well as our bylaws, more of the meat. But we would say that the student, how they identify themselves, to be placed in a room with others. Typically, what we've seen is that students already are friends and that they know the transgender student, and they kind of pair up and they want to know. I would also say that looking at your school policy, different schools will have specific policy about overnights. So first look at your school policy, but then from our side, we look at it as, and I know that there's, different opinions on different spectrum, but we don't want to discriminate against that person who is transgender and make them be isolated or put them in their own room. We want them to feel welcoming, and however they identify.
Thank you. And then as far as, some of these are several questions related to posting photos, share social media.
Sure.
It says, do you need written permission to post photos?
I would ask that if it is a Key Club member or a Key Club student, that you maybe get that at the beginning of the year, or if you're going for an event, that you do have, so that the parents are aware that you're posting that as well. Written or verbal, we don't have it in policy. I would just say probably best practice is that you would. And then as far as school posts, if the school posts the K Kids group together, is it assumed it's okay to share on the group's Facebook page? I would say yes, because typically at schools, they're also going to have waivers or parents' permission for that.
And then the other chat, if you don't name the students in the photos, does that cover? You could post the photos as long as you don't name them, or do you still need that waiver?
I would say you would still at least ask the parents, and whether that's an email out to the parents and you're getting a reply, that can be your written permission, like as far as even an email communication. I have seen, I know the Caribbean, they did a really good job when I did a presentation when they were taking pictures of students that they didn't know. So I might have had permissions for me and my son, but then his friends, they might have just put a smiley face or a little heart emoji over them if you don't have permission.
Okay.
Or make sure that you have the back of the heads of the students.
I think we're out of
Okay,
time,
thank
but
you.
I'll send you a request. There's a couple of people have asked for waivers, like a form you could share that you would suggest. So, but thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. We appreciate your time and your excellent content. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I hope you all have a great day, and it was wonderful seeing all of you.
Thank you, Melissa.